It's the Sustainable Ministry Show, episode number 5. Every time a bell rings. Well, hey, everybody. We are back with the Sustainable Ministry Show. Today we've got Brent Parker and Nate Stucky with us, and we're going to spend some time talking about rest and Sabbath and what that looks like to put that biblical rhythm into our lives. But why don't we start with a few introductions. Nate, you want to tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world?
I would love to. Like Bryant said, my name is Nate Stucky. My day job is I am director of the Fermentary Project at Princeton Theological Seminary, and it is a new initiative at the seminary that integrates theological education and sustainable agriculture. And it's been a great adventure. And actually, everything that we're saying about Sabbath has a lot to do with a lot of things. But anyway, that's the day job, and enjoy doing consulting stuff with ministry architects on the side. Back in the day, had about a half dozen years in youth ministry, and then did some time farming, and then spent a lot of years in seminary.
Nice. Brent, where are you at? You've got something new going on in your life too.
I live down here in the great state of Texas, the Southern Country, as some would call it. And I have just moved this summer into a new role. I am the Wood Forest pastor. So basically, I've joined the staff of the Woodlands United Methodist Church down here to help them launch a second campus into a new community. And so after 16 or so years of youth ministry, I'm now taking everything I've learned in youth ministry and trying to start a church with it. And we're in the early stages. We had a little prayer consecration this past weekend on Sunday, and have our first sort of soft launch worship experience coming in this coming Sunday. All of our stuff's coming in, all of our chairs and sound and everything's arriving Saturday. So we're very much in the infancy of this new deal. Been working with ministry architects since 07, 08 or so, and have fallen in love with our team, especially folks like Nate and Bryant and now Melissa, and learn so many things that are going to help me even in this new church start. And so that's kind of where I am.
Well, I think it's perfect timing too to talk about, because the busyness of starting that new church can really affect your ability to take Sabbath. So we'll dig into that in just a little bit. Yeah. Melissa Rau just joined us. Melissa, where are you?
Right now?
Yeah, where are you right now?
I am. I'm right here. I live outside of Philadelphia. And I'm getting all these, can you hear me?
Yeah, we heard it. We also heard a little ding each time you spoke.
Every time a bell rings.
Let me just tell you what happened. I know, right? So I was just coming home from a clergy conference in Cape May, New Jersey. You know that song? I've been singing that.
Clergy conference?
No. You know, the On the Way to Cape May song. I've been singing it for the last 3 days. It's been one of those ear thingies. What do you call them when you get something stuck in your head?
Q-tip?
No. Anyway, my friends, thanks for having me on. I'm sorry I'm late to the party.
We're glad you're here.
It wasn't a party till you got here anyway.
Okay.
We're just getting started.
Can I just say something though before we get much further? Brent, this is totally for you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Now, will you be turning it in upside down and inside out after Saturday's game, or no?
Very excited about this.
Well,
for those who are listening, I'm holding up a Temple University hat, and Brent is a Houston fan, and so they're going head to head on Saturday, and that's very exciting. So go Temple.
It is.
Back to you, Bryant.
Well, on that note.
People who are signed on for this, Brian, are going, what in the world?
That's right.
I
So,
disrupt things.
Nate, it might be helpful. You did some work on Sabbath in your dissertation. Can you give us like the 30-second wrap up?
Yeah, I'd love to. I'll give you the one sentence wrap up, and then we can riff on that. I think Sabbath is a practice in death.
Tell us more.
So, well, if you insist. So you should know that, like, I didn't start there by saying, Sabbath is a practice of death. I got there by beginning with listening to a bunch of seniors in high school. And so part of my work was going to young people. I had a group of like 39 seniors getting ready to graduate, and I wanted to know, how do you understand and experience rest? And they described to me this crazy irony of, on one hand, when they were trying to define rest, they did so in the terms of anxiety and worry and stress and pressure. If something was going to qualify as rest, it needed to reduce anxiety, it needed to reduce stress and pressure. But then the cruel irony was that they also acknowledged, or they subsequently acknowledged, that rest created its own anxiety. And so there was sort of this double bind whereby they longed for a rest that would reduce their anxiety, but then when they tried to have that, it created its own anxiety. And so my interpretation of that, and I think it fits with like Israelites in the wilderness, Exodus 16, it fits with the anxiety about the Pharisees and Sabbath law and all this stuff. My interpretation is like they're experiencing anxiety because their identity is being threatened. To stop and to rest is to have something core to your, if your identity is bound up in what you can achieve and what you can accomplish, to stop and rest is to have your identity threatened. And so I think the pathway to receiving Sabbath as a gift of rest and grace is allowing other lesser identities to pass away. So it's receiving life through death is kind of how I talk about it.
And so, help me with this. Pete Scazzaro in Emotionally Healthy Spirituality also talks about like the enjoyment that we should find in Sabbath, and taking pleasure in the things that really give us life, as well as making sure that we rest. Is there, like, what's the balance between those two things of doing the joyful things and also resting from the work stuff?
Yeah. Brent, Melissa?
No,
I think like I would say I'm actually going to go to the farm thing, right? And I think like the compost pile for me is the place where this kind of comes together. Like the compost pile is always receiving things that are dying. It's receiving banana peels and apple cores and things that are passing away. But it's by going through that process that next summer there will be new fruit with all the pleasure and delight and new life that gets wrapped up into that. So death, thank goodness, like the gospel story doesn't end with death, but it goes through it. It's always willing to go through that in order that new life, resurrection may have the last word. So ultimately, Sabbath is a practice in resurrection, but there's only one way to resurrection, and that is through death. And I think we just would rather avoid talking about that.
For sure.
Yeah. Brian, when I was hearing Nate talk a moment ago about his project and how he defines Sabbath, he may have forgotten this, but a couple of years ago we were at a staff retreat, and we were making our way down from a meeting space where we had been through this pitch dark area. I think it was Nate and I and Adam DeVries, I think, was walking with us. And we're headed down to the bonfire where we were going to make some s'mores and such. And we stopped for a moment, and Nate looks up at the sky and says something to the effect of, "Dang, I didn't make that," or "I didn't do that," something along those lines. I said, what do you mean? And he was in the throes of this PhD at the time, and it's interesting to hear how his definitions are shifting. But I really have stuck with the one earlier that to sort of answer your question, Brian, this idea that if Sabbath is a recognition that the things that are going on around us, even the created order, are things that we did not do, that we had no hand in, that are just being done as grace for us. It does take a little bit of the pressure off of performing, which then makes it okay for me, even trying to start a new church that's a very high visible project of our campus, to still take my day off diligently, is built up in this trust that I'm really not all that necessary. I think God appreciates that I'm attempting and desiring to work alongside in the work that he's doing. But I think at the end of the day, it's a safe and fair recognition that I'm really not needed. So I can take a break and I can go play a game of basketball with my kids, and I can go work on an art project, or I can go read my scriptures. Sorry,
right,
I was getting to my office.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, I think the two things do go together, and to stop and to look at the night sky and say, dang, I didn't do that, is to let go of the myth of ceaselessness that tells us you did all that.
Right.
Right. And it's all about what you can do and what you did and what you accomplished and whatnot. So there is that. I still think there is that dying of a lesser identity, the identity that says, no, you achieved it, you can do it, you can have this sort of graceless existence. And so to stop and to be encountered by grace is actually quite disorienting, or it can be quite disorienting. So.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I did not do that, and therefore God did. And you know what? God's going to keep doing some other things that don't involve me and don't need me. And maybe from time to time, by the grace of God, I'll get to help. I'll get to participate. Maybe I'll even feel needed in a moment or two.
So Brent, then, like, as you're starting a new church, how do you manage making sure that you've got that Sabbath day in your week? Because I can imagine as you're starting a new campus for a church there, that it would be easy to just say, I've got one more thing I need to get done. How do you work that in?
Well, gosh, I mean, in youth ministry, I remember when I was doing youth ministry full time before I started this, there was always another kid I could have called, always another volunteer that could have been trained, always another program or another logo I could have developed. There was always something I could have done. And so even in those days, I had to find a way to say no to good things. And that's a practice that thankfully someone helped instill in me a long time ago. And I don't do it well all the time, but I'm realizing that in this new church start, things are very similar. There's always another family I could go and visit. There's always another way I could tell someone about what we're doing out in Wood Forest. But call it naivete, call it grace, call it just not being very smart and being completely unaware of what launching a new church is going to take from me. I've just said my family's more important than this new church. My health and wholeness is more important than this new church. And if things at home aren't good, and if things in me aren't good physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then I won't be any good to the people that I'm going to be attempting to lead in this new adventure. And so
I wonder what responsibilities we have as church leaders, both within our ministries or church leadership in general, of how to model Sabbath. I'm reminded of one of our partner churches, a guy named Adam. He would actually put in his signature, in his email signatures, his day off, his Sabbath day. And it was really kind of a reminder for everybody. Oh yeah, he's not working today. And I just thought that was really a visible way to model the need to rest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a good question. What are some of the specific things you guys do then to kind of prepare for Sabbath and make that a regular rhythm of your week? For us, it sounds very silly, but I think it's a real practical thing. Like, doing dishes is my responsibility in our household. And typically it's a Saturday that's our Sabbath. And so I seriously have started on Friday night. Every dish in the house is clean and put away, because on Saturday I'm not doing any of it, right? But a very practical thing, because it's not fun work. It's certainly not hard work or difficult to make sure the dishes are clean, but there's no piece of it that I enjoy. And so whenever, the Sabbath is like moving around to a different day of the week, whatever the night is before, I get all of that done because I don't want anything to do with it when I'm supposed to be like resting and enjoying all that God has given us. So like for me, that's a real practical piece to that. But what do you guys do to help kind of prepare and set that day aside?
Mm.